Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. My name's Marissa, and today I am going to be talking about male versus female protagonists. So, in my opinion, personally, I like to read books that I'm following female protagonists because, well, for a multitude of reasons, and I will tell you why in this video. So basically what I did was I made a pro-con list of male protagonists versus female protagonists. Again, I just told you my preference. My preference is female protagonists. So for female protagonists, the pro is, well, the first one is emotional depth. Female protagonist, to me, these are all my opinions, by the way, so don't come at me. If you don't agree with them, that's fine. These are not true for all books, just enough books that I've read that this is how I've formed my opinion on this subject. And it's not 100% across the board, because there are some male protagonists that I absolutely love following. Harry Dresden in the Jim Butcher series is, case in point proof of that. So I'm not completely biased, just mostly. So emotional depth. It's something that not a lot of male protagonists actually show. One of the big examples that I can kind of give you is the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown that I'm reading. So in the very beginning of this series, our main character, Darrow, his wife gets murdered by the government. Okay, like they hang her and murder her. His emotional depth is like a teacup. I mean, it's just like your wife who you loved with all of your heart died, and it's like there's no emotional depth to it. And I'm like, dude, you would be destroyed. I mean, there's like little glimpses here and there that maybe it went deeper than what we got to see, but to not like bring that to the forefront, I thought was just disheartening, I guess. I just wanted to see just a little bit more of that, the pain, versus the anger side of it, because it seems like the male protagonist just kind of jumped straight to that anger phase when faced with death and loss, and it just kind of bothers me because there's plenty of men out there who actually have that emotional depth range and show their emotions, and it just seems like it's playing into the stereotypical role of men burying their emotions behind this wall of anger. And it gets kind of old to read story after story with all these men acting that way, because it's just not a realistic thing. So anyway, that is a pro on the female protagonist side, because I do feel like female protagonists show more of that emotional depth. They show you the hurt and the pain and the path that they're taking on the road to healing versus just jumping into anger. So one of the cons, I have to say, goes right along with this for female protagonists, and that is that sometimes the emotional depth can drag on for too long, and it almost makes them seem whiny. And one of the big examples I will give you for this is, of course, the Twilight series. Now, I felt like Bella, when she got left by Edward, she got whiny and spent an entire book whining and complaining and crying because her vampire boyfriend left her. Not her husband, not somebody she'd been in love with for years, but somebody she had just barely gotten to know, and she spent an entire book whining about it and trying to kill herself. That's when it becomes just a little bit too much for me. And unfortunately, I see this more with female protagonists, that they tend to go into that whiny stage more often than men do. So the next thing is that, of course, female protagonists in general are just more relatable to me, just because I'm a woman, I relate to their struggles, I relate to their feelings, so I just relate to female characters more, of course, because we tend to relate to characters that are more like us in personality and experiences, in gender even, so I just tend to relate to female characters more. So plain and simple, I just have an easier time following along on a journey with a female protagonist. So the next point that I want to make is, generally when we're following a male protagonist, the relationships that are getting built in the book are more often than not friendships. Sometimes a romantic relationship comes into it, but it is definitely more focused on a friendship group, on building those bonds with people that are close, but they're not like lovers close, which is kind of nice and refreshing, because on the flip side, it does seem like in female protagonist driven books that it is more often than not about the relationship, about the boyfriend, about the husband, you know what I mean? So it's just a difference. So in that respect, although I do kind of like the romance aspect, I do think it gets overdone a lot. And a good friend group that has your back, that's tighter than a marriage, is honestly, it's probably better and more satisfying for me. So in that way, the male protagonist kind of wins out in my opinion. So I would really like to see more of that in female protagonist driven books, honestly. So if anybody has any recommendations on a strong friendship group and following a female protagonist, please let me know, because that would be awesome. So one of the cons for me in the male protagonist books is that there tends to be a lot of battle scenes or fight scenes, which is not something I'm really interested in. It just gets kind of boring and repetitive and just kind of all blurs together. I like those little scenes interspersed within the book that, it's almost like an explosion of battle, but that doesn't go on for a very long period of time, because like I said, it gets old. It gets really old really fast, because it seems like it's just like repeating the same things over and over again. I have a hard time following it. It just doesn't interest me. So it seems like male protagonist books do that more often than the female protagonist books. Differences in the way characters are, and the way characters would describe a battle, and in the way that they do battle in the first place. So the next thing is sex scenes. So in male protagonist books, the sex scenes tend to be a little more graphic, shall we say. They go into a little more depth. It's more like the rushing through it, I guess, but still like getting into the graphic nitty-gritty detail. And then in the female protagonist books, it tends to be a little more like, fluffy, romantic, candles and dinner and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that's 100% across every single book. It's just more often than not what I have seen, in reading quite a few books. So I don't enjoy like the graphic sex in books. That's way too much detail. It makes me uncomfortable to read it, quite honestly. So I do tend to prefer the either seeing it behind closed doors, or the very like minimalistic detail, and it's not described in a graphic porn kind of way, because there's just something about that that's like, that just doesn't seem right to me. It's just a little too lewd for my tastes, I guess. The next thing, and this might feel a bit weird to hear, it's kind of a little weird for me to discuss, and I don't want to trigger anybody or upset anyone. Please don't take this as 100% or take this in the wrong way, but when sexual assault or rape is described in books, and you're following a male protagonist, generally it tends to be very graphic and about the actual act itself. And in a female protagonist book, it tends to be more about the fact that, yes, it was traumatizing, but then it's the aftermath and the emotions and the trying to heal and move on from it. So I think it's just a different point of view and a different way of describing it. I'm not saying that one is better than the other, except for the fact that I like to hear more about how people are recovering from that and how they're moving past that and working through their trauma, versus hearing just how graphic the actual assault was in the first place, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I think it's such a weird topic to even talk about in books. But I think it has to be done in a very sensitive way. And I think that for women, for females in general, that it needs to be talked about in terms of it happened, you know, here's how we move forward from this, here's how we heal this trauma, here's how we deal with the aftermath of everything, versus, you know, this is what happened, you know, and then just kind of leaving it at that. I think it really needs to be handled with some delicacy. I think that is pretty much all that I have for you guys today. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to personal taste, on whether you like, you know, the female or the male protagonist better, or whether you don't really have a preference at all and you just, you know, reading a good book is reading a good book. More often than not, I find myself, of course, drawn to the female protagonist. So there are some good male protagonists out there that I really enjoy following. You know, of course, I've already told you guys before. So anyway, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week. Let me know down in the comments, who do you guys like better? Do you like female protagonists? Do you like male protagonists? Do you like non-binary protagonists? Yeah, let me know down in the comments, and hopefully we can have a discussion, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching my video. I upload every Wednesday and Saturday, and I would really love it if you would like, comment, and subscribe my videos. Have a great day.